Hello, welcome to Lemon Studios, where we talk anything and everything entertainment. I'm, of course, the Lemon himself, Zeke Lemon, and this is my review for Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 2. But before we get into that, let's get the house clean out of the way. Share, leave a like, comment below, and know your thoughts on Peacemaker, and of course, hit that subscribe button as it helps me grow into my YouTube career. I will greatly appreciate it. Now, all that out of the way, let's get into it, shall we? So, I said in my immediate thoughts on TikTok that, you know, this was one of those rare situations where I do feel like Episode 1 was better than Episode 2, but now that I've really thought about it, I think this is probably where you want to be when it comes to a Season 2, because Season 1, yeah, you need to escalate every single week. So if your premiere episode, you know, you hook them, and then Episode 2, you know, you want to keep them to prove that why they should keep going every single week. So yes, Episode 2 should be better than Episode 1 when it comes to a Season 1. Season 2, though, I feel like, hey, start strong to show, hey, we're back, and then take your foot off the gas a little bit. Take a little bit of time. Set the table to see where the tempo of the whole entire season is going to go. You could argue, no, you should do that with Episode 1, but I am really liking the structure of this show because I still stand by what I said. I still think overall, Episode 1 was a stronger episode than Episode 2. That doesn't mean I think Episode 2 was bad. Far from it, to be completely honest with you. I liked a lot of the things that we did here. But again, when it's going to come out through the whole entire overall piece that is this season, I think, you know, we're not going to remember Episode 2 as fondly as it, but I do think this does set the table very well. I really like the cold open with Rick Flag Sr. and, you know, reading the police report and going, okay, now I want surveillance on Peacemaker 24/7 no matter what. I wonder how that's going to come into play later on. Does he lose his position because he is so obsessed with Peacemaker as the season progresses? But yeah, that whole cold open was cool. I really did enjoy that. But then we get into the nitty-gritty, into the potatoes, if you will, of this episode, of seeing that Chris, okay, he killed himself, and then he's trying to hide the body, the ongoing joke that the body keeps rolling over. It's very, very funny. And I don't know if anyone else had this same thought that I did, but before, you know, we get to the whole, hey, do you have the bone saws? Do you have your bone saws line? I was literally going, like, just chop him up. Like, he's dead. Like, what are you going to do? Just chop him up. And I don't know if I'm that sick in the head and that I immediately went to that after I think the body fell for the second time. I was like, well, you just got to chop him up. I don't know what that says about me. So I'm really hoping some other people comment below and let me know. No, I had the exact same thought. I said, no, chop that man up. So, you know, hopefully I can feel more at ease with my brain thought, because I literally had that thought and I went, man, something's wrong with me that I just thought that with no problems whatsoever. But yeah, we get into it, and the whole point of this, the whole crux of this episode is to just keep pushing Chris into wanting to go into that alternate dimension where he does display as the Chris that has a much better life than his. Seeing the conversation between him and Hardcore on that rooftop, very, very reasonable on both sides. I really like what we're doing with Hardcore as well. She is probably the most interesting out of everyone so far. Don't get me wrong, what Chris / Peacemaker is going through is very interesting as well, but, you know, he's the main character. He should be very, very interesting. And, you know, just to see how, you know, every single time he's dealt with any emotional neglect or just any emotional feeling, like, it's immediately, all right, I gotta just consume myself with booze. Like, you know, when Hardcore finally, like, just it's done with the conversation and leaves him, and that she's actually mad at him, he just starts pouring down the booze, walks home, and then wants to go for the drugs, the weed. And then I don't know if I can say that with YouTube, so we're going to take a risk here. But then he grabs a phone and he texts Hardcore, and then alternate dimension Hardcore before he walks over to the new timeline. And then, you know, last week gets rejected by Hardcore, and then immediately has that big orgy that was happening throughout. So, you know, everything he's going through is pretty interesting as well. But, you know, Hardcore wanting to get beat up, but, like, just not wanting to face anything as well. Like, it's almost like she feels like she has to be punished when anyone shows any compassion to her whatsoever. It's just, Are you good? Yeah, and then just leave it alone at that. And I feel like a lot of people, and probably especially women, can relate to that. They don't want to feel like this damsel in distress, and that they are this badass and they have it all figured out. But no, it's okay to admit you are not okay. Again, going back to the toxic masculinity aspect of it, the dynamic of economists and Obadiah are also a lot of fun. And then, Vigilante being there too. I really like the conversation between him and Chris at the post-orgy as he's bringing in the bone saws and going, oh yeah, no, I'm not mad. Okay, cool, because I really don't have time for it today. And we've all been there with our friends where, we accidentally made them mad and we don't know how we made them mad. And then we go, are you mad? They go, no, not mad at all. I'm like, okay. And then you just like, you're lying to me, but I just don't have time to deal with this right now. And then you do have the conversation later on where they go, I just find it funny how, really like that conversation quite a bit. I will say overall the comedy wasn't as fluent in this episode. And I'm a huge fan of Tim Meadows, and he made this character work for the most part. I mean, the later on one when he is doing all the code names, goes, what is it, Casino Royale, and then he had all these different names, and then he gets to the girl and he calls her, boobs, pretty much. I really, again, I don't know what I can say or not. Titties. I mean, I think that's okay, right? But when he calls her that, I mean, that whole scene where he was just giving out nicknames and the guy goes, yeah, but accept the names. You can't just give us names. I thought that was really funny. The first introduction, I liked the Pokemon joke. That was pretty funny. I wasn't a huge fan of this is where, again, sometimes it fell flat for me, like the one with Obadiah. I don't know if he was just trying to, really make economists mad, if you will, but, the whole, I will tap that. I was like, she wouldn't really be into you, dude. And I really don't know what we're doing with this. Those jokes didn't really hit for me that well. And then also, when Chris first leaves the house and that whole conversation between him and his team with yeah, no, we're going to wait to see if he goes to pick up a gift. That part I don't necessarily mind, but then, the whole thing with the housewarming and all that, I don't know. That whole scene, and, that's within the Peacemaker DNA, right. That whole Peacemaker DNA, right, is that, they go off on this tension. Someone says something, and they're like, okay, let's expand on that. People do that all the time, and it's one of the things I love about season 1 of it. And here in season 2, they have continued that on. It's just sometimes it doesn't fully feel completely natural when they do it. And I think that housewarming bit that was going on wasn't fully natural to me. But besides that, again, the constant drive of seeing to understand why Chris goes to the other dimension. And, you just understand, man, he just keeps getting beat in this dimension. And, the one person that he truly wants, there seems to be another dimension where he did have this person. Maybe they do still like him. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. We'll see what happens next week. His brother is still alive. His dad's still alive. His dad seems to actually care about him. It is. I would imagine most of us, if we were able to open the door to another dimension and everything they ever wanted. You got the girl or the guy that you always wanted. You were married at one point. The sibling that you lost is alive. The parent that neglected you, that you always kind of just wanted that acceptance and that acknowledgement and that love, they do love you in this dimension. I would imagine a lot of us knowing that this isn't the right thing to do, but would still walk in through that door and stay in there. And again, I just really appreciate that he didn't immediately go into it. He actually tried to stay out, but he just gets to this point where this is like a new drug to him. It's an escape, and I think that's the through line that we got to see, if that's the overall message of the episode of the season, I should say, is that that's not real. What you have right here is real, and then we'll progress on. But yeah, overall, really did like the episode. Again, out of the 2 so far, it is 2, but I think it really set the table well for what I think will be a really strong episode 3 and really sets the foundation, not just for episode 3, but for the whole season moving forward. So a necessary episode, just not my favorite episode. But let me know what y'all think about it on the comment section. Leave a like if you made this far of a review. I do greatly appreciate it. And hit that subscribe button as I am trying to grow into my YouTube career. And don't forget to squeeze the days, guys, because life is too short not to give you your all. So squeeze every opportunity that you can. And until next time, I'll see you here at Lemon Studios.